People often say that kindness doesn't need to be repaid, but no one tells you that. To do the right thing, sometimes you have to risk everything. It was a cold November evening, with a heavy drizzle pounding on the old tin roof of McKinley's Market, a small grocery store tucked in a working-class neighborhood bathed in the dull glow of yellow neon lights. The smell of damp earth, wet paper, and freshly baked bread mixed in the air, drifting through the aisles now empty of customers. Lily Sanders, 23, with brown hair, round glasses, and a worn supermarket uniform, stood at checkout lane 5. One hand scanned barcodes while the other packed items into paper bags, her tired eyes still holding a gentle smile. She had been standing there since noon, 8 hours straight, her feet aching, her back sore, but she never let a customer see her frown. All they saw was a young woman who patiently waited as an elderly lady counted out every single penny, who bent down to pick up a dropped bag of detergent, who quietly smiled at a crying child upset because their mother forgot to buy candy. Lily was not wealthy. She was still struggling to pay rent, saving every penny to cover community college tuition, and putting aside every coin she could for the medical textbook she needed for her final exam. After her shift, she would return to her tiny rented room with its creaky wooden bed, a desk piled with books, and a dim yellow lamp. Lily's mother had passed away from cancer 2 years ago, leaving behind a void and a final reminder: don't let poverty take away your kindness. She had carved those words into her heart, whispering to herself whenever she felt exhausted, just get through today. That night, as the clock edged closer to 9 p.m., customers had mostly trickled out. Lily straightened her back, gently rubbed her aching calves, when the automatic door chimed softly, opening to let in a blast of cold air and the silhouette of an old man. He wore a faded cap with the words "Vietnam Veteran" barely visible, a khaki jacket with worn shoulders, a thin frame, his hands trembling slightly as he held a fabric tote bag. His eyes were tired yet steady, like someone who had walked through many storms colder than this one. Lily watched him from afar as he paused at each aisle, flipping over price tags, nodding softly, and then setting items back down. He picked up a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, a can of soup, but then put the soup back. Picked up a bag of apples, then returned it to the shelf. He mumbled to himself, lips forming numbers only he could hear, eyes glancing at the worn tote bag, as if everything he owned in this world was inside it. Behind him, a man in a dirty black jacket, scruffy beard, walked in with his head down, carrying an empty basket, disappearing into the clearance aisle in the back. Lily's eyes never left the old man. There was a stillness in his steps, a sad patience of someone used to being ignored. A part of Lily's heart tightened when she saw him hesitating in front of the milk section, his hand trembling as he lifted a carton and placed it into his basket. She didn't know that within minutes, a small decision she would make would change everything in her life. When the old man reached checkout lane 5, the yellow light fell across his wrinkled face as he placed his items on the conveyor belt with shaky hands: a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, a can of soup, a small carton of milk, 5 red apples, and a small packet of ground beef. He smiled at Lily, a gentle smile, but his eyes held a hidden shame as he fumbled for his wallet, his hands trembling as he pulled a card from the worn leather slot. Ting. Declined. The scanner's beep rang out cold and sharp. The old man froze, his face flushed red, hands trembling more, the hope draining from his eyes as he stammered, Let me try again. Maybe I entered the wrong PIN." The line behind him began to shake their heads. A man in a suit behind him checked his watch with a frown. A young woman giggled quietly to her boyfriend, her eyes glancing at the old man with annoyance. Lily took a deep breath. This was the moment that would test the promise she made to her mother. Don't let poverty take away your kindness. Lily Sanders was not someone special. She didn't have a fairy tale to tell, no wealthy family to back her up, no prestigious college degree hanging on her apartment wall. Her father had left when she was little, leaving her mother to work 2, sometimes 3 jobs to raise Lily in a rundown apartment complex. Lily's childhood was filled with nights of eating peanut butter sandwiches, studying under streetlights when the power was cut for unpaid bills, and silent tears when her mother lay in bed, whispering, "Don't worry, I'm okay," even as her face turned pale and her breaths grew shallow. On the day her mother died, Lily stood alone in the hospital room, holding her mother's cold, frail hand, tears dripping onto the back of her mother's hand as she whispered, "I promise I will live kindly, Mum." Now, at 23, that promise was still what pushed Lily to get through each day. She studied part-time at community college, dreaming of becoming a nurse so she could help those who were weak. People like her mother once was. By day, she worked shifts at McKinley's Market, studying at night, then catching a few hours of sleep before doing it all again. The room she shared with a roommate was barely 200 square feet, just enough for a bunk bed, a small desk, and a wobbly bookshelf. Each month, Lily counted every dollar to cover rent, electricity, internet, and her unpaid tuition. Her fridge usually held only milk, a few cheap apples, and discount bread. But she never complained, because it was her choice to live kindly, even if it meant struggling. At the supermarket, customers loved Lily for her patience. She never got upset when an elderly customer counted out coins one by one. She never complained when cleaning up a mess caused by a mischievous child. She never lashed out when customers snapped over rising prices. She understood because she had once stood in long lines, counting out pennies before daring to put a pack of noodles into her basket. But that didn't mean it was easy. She had cried in the small bathroom after long, exhausting shifts. She had spent hours staring at her laptop screen, worrying about the electric bill coming due. She had shivered at the thought of her unpaid tuition, afraid her dream of becoming a nurse would slip away. And that night, as the cold rain pounded the supermarket roof, Lily was tired. Her hands ached from scanning items non-stop. She had glanced at the clock many times, wishing the minutes would move faster so she could go home, take a warm shower, and rest before studying. But when the old man with the Vietnam veteran cap walked in, Lily knew she couldn't turn away, even if he was a stranger, because the look in his eyes as he stood by the milk shelf, counting every cent, was the look her mother had in her final days, when she refused expensive painkillers to save money for Lily's tuition, because the trembling hands holding the card were her mother's hands, holding Lily's on her last day, because the embarrassed smile the old man gave while apologizing for taking up people's time was her mother's smile, hiding her pain behind every coughing fit. Lily knew that if she didn't help this old man today, she would betray the promise she made to her mother. And when Lily heard the scanner's cold beep and saw the word "declined" flash, when the old man's eyes darkened and the man behind him sighed in annoyance, Lily took a deep breath. She knew what would happen if she helped him. She knew the store's policies. She knew the manager would not be pleased. She knew she could lose her job. But there are moments in life when people can't live only by what should or shouldn't be done. They live for something bigger. The sound of rain on the tin roof ticked like a countdown in Lily's chest. She looked at the old man, saw his hands shaking as he tried to swipe his card again, saw his confusion, saw his frail shoulders shrinking inward. Let me put some of these back. Just the bread and peanut butter." His voice was hoarse, tinged with shame and sadness. Behind him, the man in the suit snorted in frustration, checking his watch. A young woman tugged at her boyfriend's arm, whispering, "It's taking too long." Lily's heart tightened. She remembered how her mother once apologized to a pharmacist when she couldn't afford her full prescription, how she once chose to buy food instead of painkillers, how her hands shook as she signed payment plans for hospital bills, knowing she didn't have much time left. She remembered the night before her mother died, how her mother looked at her, tears rolling down her thin cheeks. "My dear, never stop doing what's right, no matter how poor you become." In that moment, Lily understood that if she turned away, she would no longer be herself. She bent down, pulling out the small wallet hidden under the counter, her hands trembling softly. An old debit card with a tiny remaining balance, the money she had saved for the upcoming electric bill. But she didn't think for even a second. She rang up the old man's entire cart: bread, peanut butter, milk, apples, ground beef, soup. Each beep echoed steadily, the red scanner light flashing like a heartbeat pounding in Lily's chest. Then she swiped her own card. Beep. Approved. The old man froze, his eyes wide, his lips trembling. "You? What did you just do?" Lily smiled softly, her voice quiet but firm. "It's all right, sir. We have a veteran support program. Today, the store just wants to thank you for your service." It was a lie, but it was the one lie Lily would never regret. The old man's eyes turned red, tears quietly filling them. He looked at Lily, his voice shaking. "Not many people remember us anymore. Thank you, child." He reached out with trembling hands to hold Lily's hand, his skin rough and calloused, but warm in a strange, comforting way. Behind them, the man in the suit sighed in annoyance, placing his items on the conveyor belt. Lily bowed her head, apologizing. "Thank you for waiting." But inside her, a strange peace was spreading, washing away her exhaustion and worry. As the old man walked away, the paper bag swaying with each step, Lily saw him standing taller, walking more steadily, even as the cold rain continued to fall. She watched him through the fogged glass doors, the old cap with the faded Vietnam veteran lettering bobbing along puddles, the streetlights reflecting off the water like strips of gold, escorting him as he walked away. Lily turned back to her work. The man in the suit threw his credit card onto the counter without even looking at her. But Lily still smiled, gently scanning, carefully bagging the groceries, handing the paper bag over with both hands. She didn't know that, not far away. The scruffy man in the dirty black jacket was standing by the magazine rack, silently observing everything. His eyes weren't mocking, weren't judging, but quiet and focused, as if memorizing every detail. He folded the magazine, placed it back on the rack, and stepped outside, disappearing into the rain. That night, when Lily finished her shift and stepped outside, her thin jacket not enough to block the cold wind, she clenched her hands in her pockets, her breath turning into white mist. She pulled out her phone and saw the account notification. 28,075 some. That was this month's electricity bill. Lily closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She knew that tomorrow she would have to find a way to manage, recalculate everything, and skip coffee for a week just to make up for this. But when the image of the old man smiling and nodding at her came back to her mind, Lily knew she had done the right thing, and no one could take that away from her. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the small window in the rented room, landing on Lily's face as she slept hunched over her desk. Her anatomy book lay open, unfinished, beside a cup of coffee gone cold from the night before. She jolted awake at the sound of the alarm, fumbling to shut it off, her eyes burning. She hadn't slept well the night before. The image of the old man, with his trembling smile as he held the bag of groceries, kept replaying in her mind, and along with it, the notification that 28,075 had been deducted from her account, the money she had saved for the electricity bill and the internet she needed for online classes. It's okay. If I take an extra evening shift this weekend, I'll make it back, Lily told herself, tying up her messy brown hair, pulling on her supermarket uniform, and stepping out of her room with tired eyes, but a heart that felt a little lighter. McKinley's market was still quiet in the early morning. The sound of carts rolling over the tile floors, the smell of freshly baked bread, employees restocking shelves, preparing for a new day. Lily clocked in, adjusted her name tag, Lily Sanders, and smiled at Diane at the bakery counter. She gently rubbed her sore wrist and walked toward her familiar checkout lane number 5. But before she could set her bag down, the intercom crackled, Lily Sanders. Please report to the manager's office immediately. The cold announcement froze the air around her. Diane looked up, worry in her eyes. Lily flinched slightly, her heart pounding, her feet feeling rooted to the ground. Kyle, from produce, glanced over and quietly asked, You didn't do anything wrong, did you? Lily shook her head, forcing a small smile. Probably just Monica needing me to help with paperwork. But as she approached the frosted glass door labeled Monica Adams, manager, a bad feeling crawled down her spine. Monica sat behind her desk, her face expressionless, her grey suit neat, hair pulled back tightly, eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. On the desk was an open laptop, paused on a security video showing Lily swiping her card the day before. Lily froze, her heart dropping to her stomach. Monica said nothing, just pressed play. The footage of Lily swiping her card, handing the grocery bag to the old man, and smiling gently played clearly. The beeping of the scanner echoed coldly in the silent room. Monica looked at Lily, her voice flat. "Do you know that this violates store policy?" Lily pressed her lips together. "Monica, he's a veteran. He didn't have enough money. Do you understand that paying for a customer's groceries with your personal card and lying about a veteran's support program could legally implicate the store?" Monica cut in, her eyes sharp. I didn't want him to feel ashamed. I used my own money, not the store's." Lily's voice began to shake, her hand gripping the edge of her uniform. "You violated Regulation 17.3. Employees may not conduct unauthorized transactions under the store's name." Monica emphasized each word. Lily choked, tears spilling. "I just wanted to help him. Kindness does not give you the right to break the rules." "Lily." Monica sighed softly, but her face remained cold. She pushed a suspension notice across the desk toward Lily, her voice firm. "You are suspended without pay for 2 weeks, pending further review by the company. Sign here." Lily looked at the paper, her hand trembling violently. Her heart pounded, blood rushing to her face, her vision blurring with tears. "Monica, I need this job to pay for school. I need this job." Lily's voice cracked, like a child's. Monica's face stayed unmoved. "This is policy. No exceptions. Sign it. Turn in your badge and clean out your locker." Lily picked up the pen, her hand shaking so badly she could barely sign her name. She looked at Monica, pain in her eyes. "You wouldn't understand. If your mother had ever had to skip medication because there was no money, you'd understand." Monica avoided Lily's gaze, licking her lips, but staying silent. Lily finished signing, pulled off her employee badge, and placed it on the desk. The click of it hitting the surface sounded like the slamming shut of hope. As Lily cleaned out her locker, everything felt like it was spinning. A thin jacket, an empty lunchbox, a notebook filled with budget notes, and an old photo of her mother smiling gently in a garden. Diane walked in, her eyes red, quietly asking, "What happened?" "Lily." "You already know." Lily managed a weak smile, tears rolling down her cheeks. Diane took Lily's hand, whispering, "You weren't wrong. Lily, don't let them take your kindness." Lily stepped out of the store, clutching her bag of things, the drizzle still falling, the cold biting into her skin. She turned to look back at the store where she had worked for 3 years, where she had laughed, cried, and held on to hope. Today, it was all taken from her, just because she helped a stranger buy bread and peanut butter. But Lily did not regret it. That day, McKinley's market opened as usual, with customers pushing carts down narrow aisles, the smell of fresh bread in the air, and the steady beep of scanners ringing out. But something had changed. An invisible emptiness spreading across the store. Lily was no longer at lane 5. Diane, at the bakery counter, kept glancing toward checkout, where Lily used to stand, where every morning she would smile at everyone, help Diane break change, or stop by to buy a small pastry before her morning shift began. Kyle, in produce, saw Lily's name removed from the shift board, his heart tightening. He remembered how Lily had covered his shifts without complaint when his daughter had a fever. Miguel, the stockroom worker, still remembered the previous night, seeing Lily escort the old veteran out with a gentle smile, then quietly returning to work as if nothing had happened. Whispers began to spread across the store. "Did you hear Lily got suspended for helping a veteran? Really? She used her own money. Policy. It's all heartless nonsense." Diane went to the stockroom to find Kyle, speaking softly. "We can't just let this go." Kyle frowned. "What do you want to do? Monica will find out. Don't you see? We've forgotten why we even do this job. It's not just to sell things. It's to help people." Diane's voice trembled with anger. Miguel stepped forward, saying quietly, "Tonight, I'm putting an envelope on the bulletin board. Anyone who wants to can chip in for Lily. She needs to pay her electric bill, buy her school books. She helped someone else. Now it's our turn." Diane nodded, determination lighting up her eyes. At noon, when Monica passed by the staff area, she saw a white envelope taped to the bulletin board with a neatly written note, "Support Lily, the one who wasn't afraid to do what's right." Inside were a few $5 bills, some tens, and a handful of coins, small amounts, but full of warmth. Monica froze, her cold face twitching with anger. She ripped the envelope off the board, her voice icy. "Who did this? This is a violation of internal policy." No one answered. Diane kept washing the bakery trays. Miguel pretended to count inventory. Kyle continued stacking apples on the display, their eyes quiet but resolute. Monica clutched the envelope, her eyes furious, turning and walking away, her high heels clicking sharply against the tile. That afternoon, Diane quietly made her way around the store, whispering to trusted co-workers Lily wasn't wrong. She did the right thing. "Don't let them forget her." Before clocking out, Miguel slipped a $10 bill under Diane's pastry counter, whispering, "Give this to Lily. Don't let management see." As Kyle was leaving, he tucked a $5 bill into Diane's coat pocket, saying only, "We owe her." That night, in her tiny rented room, Lily sat curled up in the corner of her bed, holding her mother's photo, tears rolling down her cheeks. She had applied for a job at a nearby gas station, a place that paid less and offered no health insurance. She had no choice. Her phone buzzed. A message from Diane. "I believe in you. I haven't forgotten the promise you made your mother. You did the right thing." Then another message from Miguel. "You're not alone. Lily." Lily stared at the phone screen, tears dripping onto her clenched hand. Even though she was suspended, even though she faced the risk of losing her job, Lily felt that something was changing. She no longer felt so alone. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, inside a black SUV parked near McKinley's Market, a man with a neatly trimmed beard and a black jacket was watching everything. He had seen the envelope for Lily, seen Monica tear it down, seen the silent but firm gazes of the employees. The man smiled faintly, a determined light in his eyes. He scribbled a note in his notebook. There are still good people. It's time McKinley's had a cleansing. Tomorrow, McKinley's Market would open as usual. Monica would continue to enforce her cold policies, but a spark had been lit, and it would not be easily extinguished. The next morning, the sky was overcast, heavy grey clouds hanging low over the small neighborhood. McKinley's Market opened with the familiar ting of the glass doors, the scent of coffee blending with freshly baked bread, and hurried footsteps filling the space. Frank Donovan, the elderly veteran with the faded Vietnam veteran cap, wearing a khaki jacket with worn shoulders, stood across the street, his hand trembling as he held a fabric tote bag, his eyes fixed on the store entrance. He had spent the entire night tossing and turning, remembering the gentle eyes of the young woman from the day before, remembering how she had swiped her card for him without a moment's hesitation, remembering her soft words. "This is just a small thank you for your service." He had shed tears when he got home, opening the bag of bread, the can of soup, and the jar of peanut butter, carefully arranging them on his old kitchen shelf before sitting in silence for a long while. This morning, he decided to return, to thank the person who had helped him, to repay the money if he could, to tell that young woman that her kindness had preserved the dignity of an old soldier. As Frank stepped inside, a cold breeze followed him, bringing with it the musty smell from his old coat, his eyes scanning the checkout lanes. But the young woman was no longer at lane 5. Frank slowly made his way to the customer service counter, where a blonde woman in a grey suit was organizing paperwork. Monica Adams. "Excuse me, ma'am, the young lady at lane 5 yesterday. Her name was Lily. Is she not working today?" Frank asked, his voice trembling slightly. Monica looked up, a hint of annoyance in her eyes. "What do you need from her?" I just wanted to thank her. Yesterday she helped me when my card was declined." Monica crossed her arms, her voice cold. "Miss Lily Sanders has been suspended for violating store policy. She no longer works here." Frank froze, a ringing in his ears, his hand gripping the strap of his fabric tote tightly. "Suspended? For helping me?" His voice cracked. Monica shrugged, her eyes cold. "We have rules. Helping customers in that manner is not allowed. I cannot share any further details." Frank felt a sharp pain shoot through his chest. He took a step back, the pain clear in his aged eyes, then turned and walked toward the door. Outside, a light drizzle had started. Frank pulled up his collar, standing under the awning, his hands trembling as he pulled out a crumpled $10 bill he had prepared, hoping to give it back to Lily. That girl, she did the right thing, and they call that a violation. Frank muttered, his eyes stinging. Frank walked across the parking lot, noticing Diane pushing out a tray of bread to the front counter. Their eyes met. Diane paused, recognizing him as the veteran Lily had helped. He stepped closer, his voice hoarse. "Miss, do you know Lily? That young girl. Was she suspended for helping me?" Diane looked around, then nodded softly, her voice low. "Yes, but Lily wasn't wrong. Please, don't blame yourself." Frank gripped the strap of his tote, his eyes turning red. "That girl, she's a good person. A rare kind of good." Diane lowered her voice, whispering, "We're trying to help her. Please, don't give up." Frank looked at Diane, nodding, a spark of determination in his eyes that he hadn't felt in a long time. He pulled the $10 bill from his pocket, handing it to Diane. "Please, give this to her for me. Tell her not to let her kindness be extinguished." Diane took Frank's hand, feeling the coldness of his thin fingers, a wave of emotion rising within her. "I promise." Frank turned away, slowly walking toward the bus stop, the cold wind rustling the grey hair beneath his cap. But he no longer looked down at the ground, because today he would not stay silent. That evening, Diane sent a message to Lily. "Today, the veteran you helped came back looking for you. He left you $10 and a message. Don't let your kindness be extinguished." Lily stared at the message, tears falling onto her phone screen, her hands trembling as she clutched the phone to her chest in the cold, small room. She heard the wind whistling through the old window frame, heard the rain tapping against the roof, and felt as if her mother was sitting beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "You did the right thing." Lily. On a grey and damp Monday morning, cold winds swept across the puddle-filled parking lot in front of McKinley's Market. Employees bustled about, preparing displays, adjusting the bread shelves, wiping down counters, the smell of coffee mixing with the scent of pastries throughout the space. No one noticed the sleek black SUV quietly pulling into the corner of the parking lot, its headlights off, the man inside observing through the window. That man was none other than Jonathan Reeves, 42, the new CEO of the McKinley's Market chain, known for making undercover visits to stores to check on operational culture, something few modern CEOs still did. Jonathan wore an old khaki jacket, faded jeans, and a low-brimmed cap that hid the face once seen on business magazines. He had a light stubble, cheap sunglasses, looking like any other working-class customer. He stepped into McKinley's Market, the warmth inside pushing away the bitter cold from outside. His eyes swept over every shelf, every employee, taking note. Diane at the bakery counter, her gentle smile shadowed by tired eyes. Kyle arranging apples, sneaking glances at lane 5, now empty. Monica, the manager, checking paperwork with a cold, scrutinizing gaze. Jonathan walked over to the produce section, picking up a bag of salad, watching as Monica spoke to a new employee, her voice sharp and rigid. "It doesn't matter what the reason is. Rules are rules. If everyone acts on feelings, this store will go bankrupt." That sentence made Jonathan's brows knit together. He put the salad in his basket and continued walking. At checkout, Jonathan lined up behind a young mother holding a crying baby, her hands shaking as she counted out coins to pay for a bag of milk. Diane at the bakery counter nearby watched the scene, biting her lip, her eyes turning red, but not daring to step forward. Monica saw the scene from afar, shook her head, and turned away. Jonathan quietly observed, his hand tightening around the basket handle. In that moment, he saw Diane's tearful eyes, eyes of someone who still felt for the struggles of others. Jonathan left the store, climbed back into the black SUV, and removed his sunglasses, revealing deep grey-blue eyes. He opened his laptop and quickly typed into an internal evaluation report. Store number 27, atmosphere dominated by fear, lacking community spirit. Employees want to help customers, but fear violating policies. Management is rigid, lacks humanity. He paused, then typed Lily Sanders. Employee suspended for helping a veteran. Needs to be reviewed. Check security footage. November 14th, Lane 5. Jonathan opened a video file just downloaded from the security system, replaying the footage of Lily at Lane 5, the moment she swiped her card to pay for the elderly veteran. He saw Lily's expression clearly gentle, determined, without a flicker of hesitation, like someone who had chosen to do the right thing regardless of the consequences. He closed his eyes, that image striking a chord within him. Jonathan thought of his mother, a woman who worked as a cashier all her life, who once lost her job for giving a loaf of bread to a homeless person. Jonathan called Vanessa, his trusted assistant. I want the full HR files for Lily Sanders and Monica Adams on my desk before 8 p.m. tonight. Yes, sir. Jonathan closed the laptop, took a deep breath, and started the engine. He knew it was time to do something he had always believed in, to clear out those killing the culture of McKinley's Market with soulless rules. Meanwhile, in her small rented room, Lily sat by the window, her eyes looking out at the grey sky. Her phone buzzed with a message from Diane today. A strange man dressed simply came looking for you. He watched everything for a long time. Are you okay? Lily sighed, giving a sad smile as she replied, I'm okay. Diane, I still believe I did the right thing. She didn't know that this very belief would change her entire life, and change this small store as well. That night, Jonathan parked outside Lily's apartment, looking at the warm light spilling through the window, where a young woman was sitting at her desk, her face determined yet tired. He knew that tomorrow everything would change, because people like Lily deserve to be protected. On Thursday morning, McKinley's Market opened as usual, the soft ting of the doorbell sounding with each customer, mixing with the scent of fresh bread and morning coffee. But today was not like every other day. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the entrance, and out stepped a man in a sharp grey suit, walking with steady strides, his gaze serious but not cold. Jonathan Reeves, Monica Adams, the store manager, stood at the customer service counter, adjusting paperwork, checking sales numbers and the shift schedule. When she looked up and met Jonathan's eyes, her face paled. Mr. Reeves, I didn't know you were coming today." Monica's voice quivered slightly as she forced a smile. Jonathan didn't respond immediately. He looked around the store, seeing Diane at the bakery counter with worried eyes, seeing Kyle pretending to organize shelves while listening, the other employees pausing, the air tight with tension. Jonathan nodded slightly, his voice deep. "Gather all staff in the break room in 5 minutes. We're having a meeting." Monica swallowed hard. "Mr. Reeves, we weren't prepared." Jonathan looked directly into Monica's eyes, the steel in his grey gaze silencing her. 5 minutes. The break room was packed with staff. Diane, Kyle, Miguel, and the others stood quietly, their eyes fixed on Jonathan, tension hanging in the air. Monica stood beside him, arms crossed, her face stiff. Jonathan scanned the room, his gaze sharp, then spoke. "I came here today to see what McKinley's market really is, not the numbers I get on reports." He pulled a USB drive from his pocket and plugged it into the old TV in the break room. The screen flickered, displaying the footage of Lily at lane 5, the moment she swiped her own card to pay for the elderly veteran. The beep from the video echoed in the silent room. Jonathan did not take his eyes off the screen, his voice ringing out clear and firm. "Here is your full, precise American English translation for voiceover, fully preserving all details, tone, emotion, and storytelling rhythm for your YouTube narration, with no summarization or omission, and ending with hello exactly as requested. This is employee Lily Sanders, and this is an act I believe any human being with a shred of decency would do." Jonathan looked around the room, seeing Diane's eyes glisten with tears, seeing Kyle's hand clench, seeing Miguel nod quietly. Jonathan continued, "I have watched this video no less than 10 times, and every time I ask myself, why would such a kind act be punished?" Monica swallowed hard, her voice rigid. "Mr. Reeves, I acted according to company policy. This employee performed an unauthorized transaction, misrepresented it as a store program, which could have caused legal issues." Jonathan turned his head, locking his eyes on Monica, his voice lowering, each word dropping heavily into the tense air. "Do you know why McKinley's was founded?" Monica fell silent, her face starting to lose color. "My father built this store from a small produce stand with the belief that kindness is the most valuable capital in business. You have forgotten that." Monica's fists tightened. "I was only following procedure." Jonathan pulled out a folder, tapping it lightly against the table. "Employee complaint files about your management style. I have read every single page." Monica took a sharp breath, her eyes darting around the room. The people who once feared her gaze now stood tall, looking back at her with a courage that seemed to free them. Jonathan glanced at Diane, then back at Monica. "You have created a culture of fear, where kindness is suffocated, where people bow their heads out of fear of losing their jobs just for trying to do what is right." He paused, his voice low but clear with every word. "Today, that ends." The room fell silent, the sound of Monica's heavy breathing echoing. Monica stammered, "You can't. I've been here for 8 years." Jonathan's gaze stayed firm, but not hateful. "You will receive your termination notice today. Thank you for your years of service, but McKinley's market has no place for those who forget that people matter more than numbers." Monica's knees buckled, and she stepped back, her face pale. Jonathan turned back to the staff, his voice softening. "Warm. Lily Sanders will be reinstated with full back pay for the time she was suspended." Diane burst into tears. Kyle let out a relieved sigh. Miguel clapped softly, and soon the room filled with applause, the sound rolling through like a wave lifting the weight that had been pressing on them. Jonathan raised his hand, smiling. "This is not just my company. This is a place where people should feel proud to work, where they are treated as human beings." As the meeting ended, Monica quietly stepped out, her hands shaking as she held the termination notice, her eyes panicked. The glass door closed behind her, leaving a space that felt lighter, as if a storm had just passed, carrying away the fear that had lingered. Jonathan looked around, nodding softly. "Now, let's start a new day." A thin ray of sunlight pierced through the window, shining on faces still wet with tears, but now glowing with hope. That afternoon, light rain fell over the narrow streets, the water glistening under the streetlights. In her small rented room, Lily Sanders sat at her desk, the yellow lamp casting a glow on her tired yet determined face. Her hand gripped her pen tightly, eyes on her budget notebook, scribbled over with corrections. Electricity $52, rent $400, next semester's books $120, debt to roommate $35. This week's paycheck wasn't coming, her savings were dwindling, and a new job was uncertain. The phone on the table buzzed, displaying an unfamiliar number. Lily hesitated, then pressed answer, her voice trembling. "Hello." On the other end came a deep, warm but strong voice. "Hello, Ms. Sanders. This is Jonathan Reeves, CEO of McKinley's Market." Lily gasped, her heart pounding, her hand tightening around the phone. I'm sorry. I don't understand. Why are you calling me?" Her voice shook. Jonathan spoke gently. "You don't need to apologize. I would like to meet you this afternoon, if you're willing." An hour later, Lily stepped out of her small room in her thin jacket, her brown hair tied back, her hand trembling as she saw the black SUV waiting outside. The man in the grey suit stepped out, smiling softly, extending his hand. "Hello, Lily. I'm Jonathan." Lily looked at him, surprised by the simplicity in his gesture, the warmth in his eyes. "Hello. But why do you want to meet me?" Jonathan motioned for her to join him in the car. They sat in the warm cabin, the rain tapping gently against the windows. Jonathan pulled out a USB drive, plugging it into the small screen in front of the passenger seat, replaying the footage of Lily swiping her card for the elderly veteran. Lily watched herself on the screen, tears welling up as her hands clasped together tightly. Jonathan spoke. "Do you know, Lily, I have watched this video dozens of times. You did what many would not, simply because they were afraid of being punished, afraid of being fired." He turned, looking directly into her eyes, his voice full of respect. "But you chose to do the right thing." Lily lowered her head, her voice catching. "I couldn't let him walk away with that look in his eyes. I know I broke the rules, but I couldn't turn away." Tears rolled down Lily's cheeks, falling onto her hands. Jonathan placed his hand on her shoulder, his voice warm. "You weren't wrong. The system was wrong, and I'm fixing it." He pulled out a folder, placing it in Lily's hands. On the cover it read, "Offer of employment, McKinley's Market." Lily opened it, her eyes shaking as she read the line, "Assistant Director of Customer Service, Culture and Kindness Program." The salary was 3 times her previous income, including health insurance and tuition support. Lily looked up, tears brimming. I don't understand. I don't have a degree. I've never managed." Jonathan smiled, his voice gentle but firm. "You have something no training can give a kind heart. I need people like you to help change McKinley's Market, to restore the values my father taught me, that kindness is not a crime." He paused, looking at Lily. "Will you help me, Lily?" Lily sobbed softly, tears flowing freely, her hands trembling as she clutched the folder, her eyes lighting up for the first time in months. I will." Jonathan smiled, extending his hand. "Welcome back, Lily." As Lily stepped out of the car, holding the folder, watching the SUV disappear down the wet street, she lifted her face to the sky, taking a deep breath as the raindrops mixed with her tears. For the first time, the future did not feel dark. She had kept the promise to her mother, "Don't let poverty take away your kindness." And it was that kindness that had changed her life. That morning, light filtered through thin clouds, shining down on McKinley's Market like a new greeting. The automatic doors opened with their familiar ting, and all eyes turned as Lily Sanders walked in, holding the folder, her face still carrying worry, but her eyes shining with hope. She was still wearing her thin jacket, but this time her head was held high. Diane at the bakery counter looked up, her eyes red, dropping her tray of bread and rushing over to hug Lily tightly. "You're back. I knew you'd come back." Kyle from produce came over, smiling brightly. "Welcome back, Lily." Miguel stepped out from the stockroom, giving a thumbs up. "This store needs you." Lily laughed through her tears, hugging them all, feeling the warmth and unity she once thought had vanished in this harsh world. The intercom chimed. "All employees, please gather at the bakery area. An important meeting is about to begin." Staff stepped away from their posts. Customers watched curiously, a few older customers smiling as they saw Lily walking through the crowd, whispering, "She's back." The area in front of the bakery was cleared, and there stood Jonathan Reeves, CEO of McKinley's Market, in his grey suit, his gaze serious yet warm. Standing beside him, unexpectedly, was Frank Donovan, wearing his Vietnam veteran cap, holding his fabric tote. His eyes filled with emotion. Lily froze when she saw Frank, her eyes welling up as she quickly stepped forward to grasp his thin, aged hand. Frank squeezed Lily's hand, his voice shaking. "You silly girl. I told you not to let your kindness be extinguished. I'm proud of you." Lily burst into tears, hugging him tightly, the room falling silent as those around them wiped their eyes. Jonathan stepped forward, his voice clear. "Today, I am not here as a CEO, but as a human being, grateful to those who reminded me that kindness matters more than any policy." He looked around, pausing before continuing. "We have forgotten that this store exists not just to sell products, but to serve the community, to make people's lives a little easier, a little warmer." He gestured toward Lily. She did the right thing, and today, Lily is not returning just as an employee, but she will lead our kindness and community program at McKinley's, helping us train and preserve the values we are at risk of losing. The store erupted in applause. Diane hugged Lily tightly, tears streaming down her face. Kyle nodded. Miguel whistled joyfully. Frank stood beside Lily, his old eyes filled with pride, whispering, "You saved me. Now you're saving this place." Jonathan raised his hand for quiet and continued, "Today, I also want to announce that starting this month, McKinley's Market will launch a veteran support program and an emergency fund for customers in need, so no employee will ever have to choose between kindness and their job." He looked at Frank, then back at Lily, and it all started with a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, and a person brave enough to do what's right. As the meeting ended, customers began to applaud, and a woman whispered to her son, "Look, that's how you change the world." Lily stood among everyone, her eyes watery but sparkling, clutching the folder that declared her new role. That night, Lily returned to her small room, opening the old wooden box her mother had left behind. Inside, a photo of her mother smiling softly in a garden, and a small folded piece of paper. "Don't let poverty take away your kindness." Lily placed her hand on the paper, tears falling silently, but she did not cry out of sadness. She cried knowing her mother would be proud, because she had kept that promise, even when she thought she might lose it. She whispered, "I did it, Mum." And somewhere else in the city, Jonathan Reeves sat in his office, looking out at the city lights. In his hand was a printed still from the security camera, Lily swiping her card. A gentle smile on her face as she looked at the elderly veteran. He pinned the photo on his board, right beside his father's words, "A company exists not to count money, but to serve people." He told himself, "We can do this, as long as there are people like Lily." You know something? In a busy world where everyone is racing to survive, it is easy to become numb, easy to bow to rigid rules, to ignore the eyes of someone in need, or to turn away out of fear. But there will always be those who choose to stop, to help, to do what is right. People like Lily, like Diane, like Frank, people like you, because a loaf of bread, a can of milk, a small gesture can change a person's entire life. And one day, when you look back, you will not regret having chosen to be kind. That is how Lily Sanders, a young woman with a determined heart, changed a store, changed a system, and changed her own life. And what about you? Will you dare to choose kindness? No matter how harsh this world may be, life is not always fair. Sometimes you do the right thing and you get punished for it. Sometimes you choose kindness and it costs you everything you have. Sometimes you stand up for someone and all you get in return is silence or judgmental eyes. But people like Lily Sanders remind us, don't let poverty, fear, or the harshness of life take away your kindness. Because even if you don't see immediate returns, the kindness you sow today will grow, will spread, and will come back to you in moments you least expect. When Lily swiped her card for the veteran, she didn't think that act would change her life. She just knew she couldn't turn away from someone who needed help. She was suspended, lost her pay, faced the fear of losing her job, but that very act became the seed that changed an entire system, reminding a whole company that people matter more than profit. Lily's story is not just about a young woman who dared to do what was right. It is about all of us, living in a world full of worries. You could be Diane, who stood up for a colleague. You could be Frank, who valued kindness and refused to let it be forgotten. You could be Jonathan, who chose to use his power to create change instead of just watching from the sidelines. Or you could be Lily, who chose to be kind, even knowing the price she might pay.